Many of us dream about our perfect vacation. It may be Europe, it could be the Caribbean, or maybe an Alaskan cruise. But for many of us, that dream vacation involves Hawaii, that blue water, those volcanoes, the beautiful beaches. But many times what we don't think about are the people that live there, work there, and provide the essential services. Our guest today will give her perspective on the utility industry from what we'll call the middle of the Pacific. Hello, everyone. I'm Rusty Williams, President and CEO of UTC, and I want to thank you for joining us today on this edition of the UTC podcast, and we call it The Intersection. We call it that because UTC and its members sit at that intersection of technology and the delivery of reliable and cost-effective utility services. Today, our guest is Georgia Anton, who is currently serving as the Policy and Contract Strategist for Hawaiian Electric. Georgia is also the newest member of the UTC Board of Directors, as she's recently taken the reins as the chair of the Utilisite Division. Georgia, it's great to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for taking some time and being with us.
Good morning, Rusty. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast.
Yeah, and looking at your bio and speaking with you about your career and things that you've done, there's some interesting things there from your career perspective. You're a lawyer by training, and at UTC, you're surrounded by a bunch of engineers, so I know that's interesting for you. But you've worked as a lawyer for quite a while, and you've been with your current employer, Hawaiian Electric, for about 5 years, and you're working on, co-location, dark fiber kinds of things. What have I missed? Tell me, a little bit more about yourself and your career that got you to where you are today.
Well, it hasn't been a straight line, as many of our career paths.
Oh, that would be boring if we had a straight line. Now, being an engineer, I would love for that to happen. But I think it helps us all learn and broaden ourselves when that's the case. So explain that.
Absolutely. I didn't grow up wanting to work for utility. I didn't even grow up wanting to be a lawyer. I went to law school kind of to satiate an intellectual curiosity about the law. It has the rules that govern how everybody does everything in our society, and yet they're so complicated that a specialized career and education is required to even understand them. So I went for kind of that purpose, and that took me where it did. I worked for the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. I was very interested in land and agricultural rights. I did some independent research for an attorney, which really looked into the interplay of federal and state law, which was very interesting and very applicable to FCC regulation, at least in the state of Hawaii. And then I went into litigation at a firm in Honolulu and realized that was not what I love. I did not love being in the courtroom or, seek the corner office. Yeah. And so I found this job at Hawaiian Electric that really, I'm not in the legal department, so I use my legal background, but I do the kind of joint use regulatory and contracting for our division. And at Hawaiian Electric, I work in the Pole Infrastructure Enterprise Division, which is basically our joint use / business development department. And so I sit in there, and again, I'm not technically the attorney for it, but I get to do enough legal work that it scratches that itch. But I also get to really expand my business development, creative side of my mind that this job allows. So it's brought me here.
Do you also get involved with the marketing side? Sorry to interrupt you, but do you get involved with the marketing side of like dark fiber leasing or pole attachments?
Absolutely. We and the Pole Infrastructure Enterprise, which we lovingly call PI, we're it. We're really trying to leverage we started with pole attachments because we bought our ILEC out of the pole space in 2018. And so all of a sudden we needed to manage that FCC pole attachment program. But then we thought, wait a second, we have all of this other infrastructure that we're not leveraging for additional revenue and for outside benefit. And so that's what really got us into the co-location and the dark fiber. And our utility, like many other IOUs and otherwise, has a fiber network for our own comm needs. but we weren't marketing that externally. And so we had kind of heard buzzes around in the community, and we started saying, hey, we've got this stuff. And so it's been a slow turning of the ship to kind of redirect towards a external business mind. But that's been in large part what I've been doing with our group and with my very brilliant, wonderful boss, a woman named Christian Whitney. She's had this vision to really leverage what we've already had and what many utilities are already doing to get into the community, to realize a mutual benefit, and
Right.
to bring in additional revenues for the utility.
Yeah, that's that is always a good thing, and it's always a good thing too to give kudos to your boss. So there you go.
She's
You,
fantastic. I do it no matter what.
all right. So you talked a little bit about Hawaiian Electric, and there's many of us that know. Well, obviously there's a power company there somewhere, right? But I've heard names through the years of HECO, Hawaiian Electric, Helco, Maui, and so I don't know if there's if there was at one point, a separate company on every island or how it worked out, but describe that to us just a little bit about the structure of the company in terms of coverage and what kind of services and that sort of stuff, just to help people kind of tie the loose ends together here.
Absolutely. So right now we are Hawaiian Electric, which is one company that covers 5 of the 6 main Hawaiian islands. We serve 95% of the state's 1.4 million residents. And we're a very old electric company. I think we were chartered in 1881 by King Kalakaua. We were the first, Iolani Palace was the first royal residence to have electricity, which was predated the White House having electricity. So we've
Oh,
had a power company here for quite a long time. And it was originally, Hawaiian Electric was originally on the island of Oahu, which is the state capital and the island where the majority of our residents live.
right.
Hawaii Island, the Big Island, colloquially, had Hawaiian Electric Light Company, which is Helco, and then Maui County, which are the islands of Maui, Molokai, and Lanai, had Maui Electric Company. And so, although the 3 companies still have quirks, they no longer operate as entirely separate
Okay.
entities. They are all under the one company, Hawaiian Electric, and we roll up to our parent company, Hawaiian Electric Industries. And so we have the fun and challenge of operating very small grids on separate islands. And so generation and distribution is quite unique in at least the American landscape for how we generate, transmit. And as we're experiencing right now, some big storms have come through. When our grids are so small and our islands are very small, it's often not, it often can affect the whole grid at once. So we have our work cut out for us in serving the community.
Yeah. So yeah, you think about it. I mean, logically we know, there's islands. So, there's no connectivity, back to the mainland or wherever, whichever direction you want to go. But when you get to thinking about the specifics of it, and again, you would think in that region, there would be the opportunity for solar, there would be the opportunity for wind, and other things. But yet you've got to manage them almost as microgrids, so to speak. That's my term for that. But so you mentioned a couple of things, the challenges when the bad things do happen. On the mainland, you can call your buddy next door to bring his crews over, or you can go borrow poles or wire from, the utility down the street. I'm assuming that would be a challenge for Hawaiian Electric, especially in light of some of the disasters that have happened. We were talking earlier. I mean, as we're recording this, just in the last few days, there's been floods, some significant floods on the islands, and was it a couple of years ago when you had the wildfires, and so any description of how you guys sort of manage when that happens in comparison? If you may not know this, but compared to other utilities, and in terms of mutual aid, you got any idea?
Absolutely. Well, I will say absolutely happy to answer. Absolutely. I do not have the full picture. This is outside of, my wheelhouse and my area of expertise. But yes, you hit it on the head. It really is a different landscape in terms of mutual aid, and not that that doesn't exist, but we are almost literally in the middle of the Pacific, and we are, approximately 3,000 miles from the West Coast of the US. And so everything gets here by boat. And that takes a long time and costs a lot. And so, other than people who have flown here, and during the catastrophic August 2023 Maui wildfires, we did have folks flying in and helping. But in terms of kind of backstock, we really have to, and emergency preparedness, not that everybody doesn't plan, but we really have to spend a lot of extra time and consideration and space being prepared for these things, knowing that shipping disruptions, right now, the price of oil, we have a very large renewable portfolio, but we also use oil and diesel and biodiesel, and those things get shipped in, and those, ships travel thousands of miles to get here. So it's really utilities plan ahead as a whole. That is part of the industry. We are required to keep the lights on, and reliability is the name of the game for an electric utility. But I dare say Hawaiian Electric really has additional hurdles in being able to effectively plan and keep the lights on.
That whole idea of inventory, the disaster recovery type inventory is something that I really haven't thought about. You got an idea that, we've got to figure out a way to get some bodies in there to help, but that you can't drive your trucks from California or wherever, right? And be able to bring people and tools and, spare parts, with them. So that would be a challenge. All right. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit. I mentioned in the intro that you had just joined the board of directors for UTC and are just getting heavily involved in the organization. Tell me a little bit about what kind of drew you to UTC, and when you look at, how'd you first hear about it? Who got you involved, and why you stay involved? Why do you see the value for your company in being involved with UTC?
UTC has been an enormous resource to me, and I am entirely grateful for the amount of information I've gotten from being a participant and how much it has helped with my utility education. As I started earlier, I didn't come up in the utility field. I'm coming up on my 6 years at the utility, which in utility time is a pretty short time. And when I got hired at the very beginning of 2020, my boss took out her daughter's easel. We had met at home because it was COVID, and said, "This is a utility pole. Like, do you know what all these lines are?" And literally did a drawing of it.
Good for them.
And these are the power lines, and these are the comm lines, and kind of this is what a down guy is, and just some like basic anatomy. And she had said, there are these, we're members of UTC and EEI, and why don't you start joining these meetings when you can? Although at that time they were horribly early in the morning for Hawaii. Thank you for shifting them back slightly. The 6 a.m. informational call is tricky. But it was really helpful to my education. Whether you know a ton and can pick up on the fine-tuned finesse details, there's value for you there, or whether you're brand new to the utility field and you only understand a fraction of what's being shared, it's incredibly helpful. And so I started attending those calls and just taking furious notes and following up on resources and getting my education from there, and then slowly coming outside of my shell and saying, oh, this person knows a lot about something I'm trying to do. I'm trying to draft this co-location contract from scratch. People have done this. Let me reach out to them, and realizing that tool of not just the education, but I think really the networking and the resources that come from the people and the expertise at UTC is enormous and has had an outsized impact on my education. And so I've just been attending, and then I've been poking around, and oh, this, I'm also trying to figure out about fiber. And now I have a colleague who's doing that with me. Like, there's a fiber subcommittee. Let's join
Mm-hmm.
that. And there's the public policy. I'm the one charged with tracking developments in our FCC pole attachment program. And for a while there was a ton of activity at the FCC level. And so I don't have to just read those orders and all of that, all of those documents alone. I can lean into the expertise of the field. And so really it was just kind of out of necessity of this is really helpful educational tool. And now that I've become more involved, I continue to find value in it and preach it to others of this is a resource. Why not participate? And
Yeah.
it's really full of really nice people.
Yeah, and I have a tendency to preach that also, but that's my job, to do that. But what you described just there is what I describe when I'm in front of the audience or in front of members or just one-on-one of, yeah, there's resources there, there's tools there, but there are people there and learning, who around you has done whatever it is that they've done. No, build a network to where you can pick up the phone, call somebody. That's to me is the most valuable from an individual's perspective. It may not be from the company's perspective, but from the individual's perspective. But there's also the in-person piece, right? So as we're recording this, we're in the middle of our spring regional conference season. And I know you were at the first one this spring in Reno, the combined 8, 9, 10 meeting. So if you were describing that to someone in the context of what you just said, what would you tell them of, what's the reason that they should go attend a regional conference like that?
It's the next step of what I just said. You get so many resources, you meet people on these video calls, but it really takes it to the next level. It's the difference of being on a video call versus being down the hall from somebody and being able to poke your head into their office and saying, hey, I have a question. It might not be important enough that I would schedule a meeting or pick up the phone and call you, but I can just have these things come out in casual conversation. It's really helpful to put faces to names, especially on these calls now that I'm the chair of the Utilisite committee and I'm on camera all the time. Nobody else is on camera. And so as we know, it's challenging to gauge reactions and level of engagement. And so meeting people in person was really helpful. Of course, the sessions were great, some of which are totally on point with what I do in my role, some of which I had a hard time understanding because they're so technical and not in my role. But regardless, the industry information, the vendors and the technology, all of the partners that we have, and then meeting people. And multiple people said to me throughout my few days there, this is like a big family. You'll continue to meet me again and again and again. And people toss that around sometimes, but everybody was so friendly and welcoming and willing to share. And
Right.
at the beginning of my time in my job, I wanted to find out more information about, again, like how are people managing their joint pole programs? What are people doing about dark fiber? What do you do about this double pole issue? And I didn't have this resource yet. And I was doing a lot of Googling of utilities and trying to find my position at another utility and then picking up the phone or emailing. Not that people weren't receptive to that, but it's a lot harder to get somebody to kind of spill the tea and maybe share their template contract or how they deal with something tricky when you don't know them. And this has provided that venue, and especially the in-person aspect of developing those relationships where now I can pick up the call, and whether they know my name or not, they see my involvement with UTC, and somehow that builds a level of trust that they're willing to share information with me and my company that can help continue, stand on their shoulders, so to speak, and not redevelop the wheel, which is enormously helpful.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot, particularly people that aren't in the utility industry are surprised at how well and how open people are and being willing to talk and share. I mean, it's the nature of the business is we're not competing with each other. So that's probably the biggest single factor, but there's a lot of people. And one of the things you mentioned earlier was that people have a tendency to have a longer tenure with a utility company. And so you do see the same people for 5 years, 10 years.
Yes.
Right. And so not only, do you know a face, but you actually develop a relationship with these people. And I've got many friends that are now personal friends, because of all of that interaction. All right. So one of the things that I've wanted to do in listening to people talk and giving me feedback, well, since I've been in this position, was in the area of networking, was not only do we need some technical opportunities to get together and talk about dark fibers or private LTE or fill in the blank, but there's some other areas that we think we can help. And part of it is what you were describing, integrating people that are new in the business. And so we've been looking at that. We've been looking at, ways to support minorities and ways to support women that are in this industry. Because, you know it as well as I do. The utility industry, the legal industry, others, historically have been male dominated, lines of business. So how have you been able to manage that to not only survive, but to thrive and grow as a female, whether you're talking about from, as a lawyer or as a utility employee or however? I mean, what's your thoughts and advice to somebody that, is in the same situation that you were in?
Thanks for asking that, Rusty. I think it's a really important question and sometimes unseen or unspoken. I often find myself as the only female at the table, on the call, in the meeting, kind of whatever the venue is. As we all know, the utility field is largely male dominated, and the legal field is coming up. But as soon as you get up in the ranks, the women are winnowed out for various reasons. And I think it's really important to just be myself. And it takes sometimes confidence, and there's some cultural conditioning there that, people may have different opinions on. But I don't try and hold myself back or soften myself or think, well, how am I going to be perceived? It's just being myself. And again, I'll give a lot of credit to my incredibly brilliant, supportive, kind boss, Christian Whitney, and she has been an enormous influence in me and a great leader, and really a great mentor. I work in a small division that's female led, and for a long time was almost all women in it. And now we've balanced out a little bit more. We've picked up our joint pull, our double pull program, which is more men, but it's been a great example. Our CEO is a very smart, capable woman, Shelly Kimura. And so at least in Hawaiian Electric, in leadership roles, we're starting to see more women. And that's really helpful to see representation, and whatever the representation is, it's really helpful to see that and be brought up and not be apologetic for being what you are, where you are, which is a smart, capable person who's very competent at her job. So it's just a matter of, or it's not just a matter, I don't want to simplify it. It's a matter of being confident in who you are and where you are and what you're doing, and that I know the most about what I'm talking about very often. And so being humble, but not being afraid to lean into my expertise.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you this, and I'm trying not to put you on the spot here, but what's the number one key factor in your mind? Is it confidence? Is it technical ability? Is it having that mentor, or sponsor, if you will? If you can narrow it down, I'll give you a second to think about that. If you can narrow it down just to one thing that you think is the key for women in this industry or other industries that may be male dominated, what do you think it would be?
Well, frankly, I think it's an overall paradigm shift societally, but
Okay,
at a
that's
personal
fair.
level, I really think it's just, how should I say it? I really think it is just an individual doing the best that they can do and not thinking about how would I do this as a woman, or how would I do this as a
Mm.
man? Kind of the ability to erase that thought and just act how you think professionally you would need to act.
Okay.
And if we were able to think about that less often, I think that would be a real boon to myself and just women in the workforce in general.
Yeah. And again, we're trying to do that within UTC, particularly at the annual conference, of trying to help not just women, but other groups of people, younger people, whatever, to be able to build those networks and be able to have someone they can talk to as they go through that. So you're pretty early in your career. Where you are today in your career, and you're looking forward 20 years, where's Georgia going to be in 10 or 20 years, do you think?
Rusty, I've been thinking about that in general, not just knowing I was coming on this podcast, but I feel I'm a very ambitious person, and I have very high ambition for my career. And yet often my ambition doesn't specifically channel itself into this is my one dream job that I'm going for. So it's more of a feeling of being successful and being able to really do my work well. And I love the idea of this business that we have in the dark fiber co-location joint use, like really expanding, potentially someday being kind of its own business. I know some big IOUs have an unregulated arm that gets to do the business. So really kind of shaking up that and changing our regulatory framework and our business model for that I think would be really fantastic. But I really love working in Hawaii and at Hawaiian Electric. It's a really excellent employer and gives a lot of room for growth. So I can certainly see the potential for a long and good career here.
Yeah, working for a utility like Hawaiian Electric or others. I was at Southern Company. That is a good job, good career, and you've got opportunities to do things that you might, otherwise not have the opportunity to do. Okay, so I mentioned earlier is my tease coming into the podcast was, Hawaii is sort of the, on the top 3 list for a lot of people of dream vacations. As a Hawaiian resident, you live there. It's probably like a lot of other things. You kind of get used to being where you are. But where's your dream vacation spot or activity that when you're thinking about it, what is it you want to do that's the equivalent of me trying to get to Hawaii?
Yeah, well, you have to get off the rock, as we say here, pretty regularly. We're only 20 miles by 30 miles approximately. Each island's slightly different, but it's pretty small. So I am one of 3, or I have 3 sisters. I'm one of 4 girls, and they live around the world. And so our dream vacations are often meeting in one of our places. So I go to Tanzania and East Africa and visit them near Mount Kilimanjaro and on safari down in the southern part of the country pretty regularly, or meet where their family in Italy is. And I go to California quite a bit. So we do sometimes go to other places, but having family in Tanzania and Italy and California are pretty prime, and here, prime locations. So we will sometimes meet somewhere else, but it's pretty nice to be able to visit family in exotic and extraordinary places.
Yeah, I have had the opportunity to go to Hawaii a couple of times, and I vouch for it highly if you have the opportunity to do that. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap right there, Georgia. Thanks for taking some time to be with me today. I enjoyed over the course of prepping for this, getting to know you better, and look forward to what, you're going to bring to UTC to help make the organization better. But thanks for taking the time and being on here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Rusty. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm enjoying an increased role at UTC. I really look forward to working with all of our members in a bigger way.
All right. That sounds great. Well, if you do get the chance to go to Hawaii, as we've been talking about, don't forget those people who live there. Don't forget those critical services, that have to, go on just like they do anywhere else. And, we'll have some more appreciation for our brothers and sisters in Hawaiian Electric and around the islands there in that area. Because there's a lot of people like Georgia that worked really hard to make sure our vacation in paradise is what we want it to be. All right, for everyone else, thanks for listening to this edition of the Intersection Podcast. I hope you'll subscribe. Be on the lookout for our future monthly episodes that come out most every month, late in the month. But if you subscribe, then you'll find out about it. And I look forward to seeing you down the road.